All right, so we're going to go through a bunch of stuff today that's related to, I guess it's related to like I was talking to you guys about Bloom's taxonomy last week, but let's do a little bit better intro than that. Okay, so far you guys have, most of us have created their content or identified their content standard. You guys created, a little bit of an example of a backwards map. And I've read all of you guys' objectives and goals so far for the larger unit, and then I'm just going to go through the finalized unit plans. And then what's next, obviously, this week is you guys are going to, hey Taylor, you guys are going to create a specific lesson plan within the unit, okay? And you're going to follow the template, and I'll just go over that because I'm not going to go over the activities, I don't think, today very much. I guess let's just get rid of some housekeeping first. So you guys are going to go over a lesson plan. You're going to create your own. I'll go over that in a second. And then you're going to review somebody's, and I'm leaving it to you guys this week to pick whomever. And if people get doubled up, that's okay in terms of timing. But go ahead and grab anybody's lesson. And if someone else has done it, that's fine. And then activity 3, we will do at 2:30, hopefully, depending on what we get through right now. But with the lesson plan, and this is the same template that you guys will use for clinicals, but it's the one that we've been looking at with the observation of the teachers as well. But here it is. You've got, your standard or standards from your lesson. Remember, you can use one or multiple standards and, multiple objectives if that's what's going on. Focus on the literacy skills. And then obviously, how are you going to differentiate? What are your assessments? Big ideas, etc. Okay, so it's not too tough to figure out what to do, but basically you guys are explaining, you guys are just going to follow this along, and if you can use it for your clinicals, that's cool, but it's not really a big deal. Just use this week to at least practice and get some feedback on creating your lesson plan so that when you do it for clinicals, it's in tip-top shape. Okay, and then activity 2, again, just grab somebody else's, and activity 3 we will talk about. And I guess we'll go ahead and get busy here. Okay, so we're going to talk about a little bit more, and I promise, I know we've got some serious DI burnout. I promise, this is it, okay, for my discussion for differentiated instruction. But as a quick reminder, when we think about why we're differentiating, and I'm going to kind of tie it into lesson planning, obviously, and we're going to have a separate piece specific to Bloom's taxonomy and some of those activities. So when we think of differentiated instruction, we remember why we do it. Okay, we're trying to maximize the kids' opportunity for success. And of course, if we're just teaching one way to everybody, we're going to reach about 60, 70% of the kids, or whatever number I can make up, right? But what we need to do is we need to vary what we do so that we give everybody a chance to succeed in, whatever, in terms of level, their interest. And we think about providing them options with what they do and how they do it. That creates a little bit of ownership. And when we look at this piece, I'll skip that and go to the why not real fast. Why not is, some people are still concerned, is differentiated instruction, is it truly valuable in terms of scholarly research? Okay. Some people are studying it, but it's not, so easy to quantify the success of differentiated instruction or not. But this is definitely what's being demonstrated in the research, is that if the kids are engaged, their performance is better. Okay, I think we all kind of agree with that as a common understanding. If they're engaged, they perform better. If they are engaged, they behave better. Okay, again, this is research proving these things. And then when we think about differentiated instruction as a whole, we are creating a higher level of engagement. So if we can agree that engagement improves performance, engagement improves behavior, and DI improves engagement, so then ultimately DI should be improving instruction, okay? So that's just kind of a why not, and I'm trying to address it in terms of the research. When we look at why not, a lot of teachers are frustrated with why they don't differentiate or why they're choosing not to, because B, right here, it's difficult to learn, okay? It's tough. And there's also the argument to be made that it's more work. You know, if you're going to create a lesson and you're teaching one skill to one population, it's pretty simple to plan for. If you're going to get a uniform result, a uniform response from the whole group, it's the way to go. However, we know once you get into a class size as big as 2, you're probably going to have 2 different responses and 2 different results in terms of what you're teaching. So my argument, and then in that case, so you've got to differentiate what you do. You've got to pre-plan. You've got to have multiple opportunities for them to access the content. You got to think about what level they are, what their interest is, plan for multiple activities so they have options to choose from, etc. Okay, so it's a lot of work. That's correct. But, and I know you guys know my take on this from the beginning, is that if you put your energy at the beginning in your planning and your delivery, you're not going to spend a lot of time babysitting and bribing the kids and threatening the kids. Okay, so maybe it's more work in the planning period, but when you're an effective teacher, your day just seems to go a little bit better. Okay, and what makes an effective teacher? An effective teacher, one piece of an effective teacher is someone who's prepared and they're teaching relevant information to the particular audience. Okay, so we went over the lesson plan. Again, you guys are going to complete that for activity 2 or activity 1. And again, I think that maybe, whoops. So I was going to say, sorry, Taylor, I know that you showed up late, but one quick thing that we went over at the very beginning is that you guys had your content standard. You had kind of a backward map, a unit plan. Now you're going to create one very specific lesson plan, which could be for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever you want, but a very specific lesson plan within the unit, okay? And that's that template you guys will work from. Okay, so now let's get a little bit interesting here. So when you guys are completing your lesson plan, I'm going to argue that you probably need to be really pay attention to these kind of skills and verbs when we're teaching as a whole. However, for this activity, it's very specific to the rubric. Are you guys using verbs from Bloom's taxonomy? And are you paying attention to those 21st century learning skills? Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about Bloom's right here and kind of show you guys how to differentiate with Bloom's and how it doesn't mean, we've all kind of seen this triangle or this pyramid. I guess it's triangle. We see at the bottom end, remember, slightly a little bit higher, Brad, we're understanding. And at the highest level, the kids are creating, they're evaluating, they're synthesizing. And what I want to show you guys is kind of a recipe for differentiation that doesn't say, here's all my low-end kids and here's all my high-end kids. What I'm going to try to show you guys is that we need to have these levels of activities for all the kids, okay? Maybe we need to spend more time in some of these areas with certain kids, but it's not fair and it's probably not effective to just have a certain few kids living here for 180 days while they're with you, while the other ones are up here. Okay, so I'm going to try to give you guys a little bit of a plan for that. So when we think of the basic introduction, and this is kind of out of order, and I guess the research and the argument can be made that, the top of the pyramid is that, you're really using advanced critical thinking skills. I think we can agree with that. But I also don't think it's that linear. I don't think it's, the top is where we all want to be and the bottom is where we never want to visit, okay? So this is kind of out of order. But, and I've also got I'll email this PowerPoint to you guys. I changed the one I sent to you guys last week, and I've actually included a list of verbs within each category that you guys can use for your objectives. But we understand that lower level, the remember, define this, and I mean, tell me what you read. Here's a common verb, list. Kids will list all of the capitals of the Midwestern states. We're just remembering, right? Understand, we're climbing the ladder a little bit. They're going to explain how the capitals are centers of government and centers of commerce in some case, right? And then we're climbing up this ladder. We've got all sorts of, and I'll stay out of order here, but at the very top, create. So now the kids are going to create some sort of response to that content. They're going to create their own map. They're going to create maybe some sort of artificial map. Who knows? Analyze. Now they're going to look at, location of the capitals and how they compare to, natural formations, things like that. Maybe they'll compare some of the populations of the different capitals. And then they'll compare maybe the population of a capital versus the largest city in the state. Things like that. Evaluate, whatever I want them to come up with, where I'm going to have them critique or talk a little bit about these state capitals. Okay, so these are just, quick examples, and we're going to do an activity in a second where I'm going to give you guys a chance to practice this together. So when we're looking at that 21st century checklist, I know I've given you guys a lot of feedback on the piece on critical thinking. Instead of just saying critical thinking is something that you're promoting, be specific with the activities, behaviors that we'll see within critical thinking. Okay, things like analysis, evaluation, application, those to me are critical thinking skills. Okay, so you can get very specific with these as opposed to just say critical thinking. But again, those 21st century skills that we've been learning the last 6 months, creativity, collaboration, communication, tech literacy, flexibility, leadership, initiative. So needs to be evidence of your lesson plan that you're focusing on these skills and living in the appropriate areas of Bloom's. Is it appropriate for you to have an entire lesson where you're simply having the kids understand something? Sure. But ultimately, you're going to move on because you want them to actually use the information. That's how they remember it. Okay, I mean, there's got to be an application piece. We've got to have more. So one lesson, sure, but in the lesson that you guys are going to present, obviously, you guys will be talking about these other ones. Okay, so another example, you guys, remember, we're just recalling facts. Understand, we're explaining those facts. Application, we're using the information in new situations. Here's some quick examples of verbs. Analysis, you're drawing connection among ideas. And I think analysis, a great understanding for analysis when you're teaching the kids is, when you're analyzing a frog, you're breaking up a whole, right? You're studying the pieces to understand the larger concept. And we've got evaluate, I don't know what that is, sand, but justify a decision, you're going to judge, you're going to critique, and then ultimately creation, we all understand what that is. So here is a big list that I'll give you guys with the PowerPoint of these different verbs to use, all the different little verbs within these sections. Okay, so let's do this real quick. Let's see. I want to give you guys, I'll break you guys up into 2 groups, and you guys can do this on your own so you'll feel a little more comfortable. But I want you guys to look at these 6 components. I'll copy and paste this and put it into the discussion so you guys have access. But I want you guys to think about, you've got this text, the Goldilocks story, and you're doing this with 5-year-olds, you're doing this with 15-year-olds. Who knows? But I want you guys to come together as a group. What are some activities that you could look at for each one of these? And I want to do this with the intention that we can see these activities just aren't for the low-end kids. These activities could also be for the low-end kids. So what I want you guys to do is I'll just break you up into 2 groups real quick and come up with, let's see what I've got on my list. So you guys are going to come up with some specific activities from that text for Bloom's taxonomy. Any questions? Not too complex, right? All right, I will split you guys up and I'll give you guys like 7 minutes. Not too tough. All right, I'll talk to you in a few. And I will send a broadcast message to you with the components again, just in case.
There's never enough time.
Never enough time. It went so fast.
Hi, Henry. Do you know we're back?
I'm totally talking to you guys. All right, sorry about that. Anyway, here's what I said. I said that I'm going to go ahead and just take notes onto this because your guys' ideas will probably be better than mine. But what's funny is I said that and a couple of you guys laughed at the exact same time. So I don't know. That's pretty funny. Anyway, I'll take some notes and maybe I'll use this for my next go around because again, you guys will probably have some good ones. And let's go ahead and start with, I think Taylor, Ayub, and Darby, you guys are a group. So what did you guys come up with some of these? And you guys can all unmic and jump in as you wish.
We had a wonderful experience because not all of us knew the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Really?
I don't know it, so I'm gonna huge fish tonight.
Poor
I didn't
Ayub.
want to out you, Ayub, but it was pretty
That's
awesome.
That's okay.
And so we realized that on a very fundamental level, so we said it would be maybe remembering and understanding. We would do some sort of a think, pair, share sort of thing, where students who do know the story would tell it to students who don't know the story.
Okay, so for understanding, they would retell the story, and I think that's the verb we'd be looking at there.
Yeah.
You know, retell that story. Absolutely, they'd have to obviously understand it, and able to in order to retell it. And there's definitely components of remembering as well.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you guys get for a little higher level? What could we have those kids do in response to that story?
So since I was taking notes, I'll explain the other ones too. So we also thought of how we could apply it, and we're thinking about the idea, the concept behind the story of the too much, too little, and just right, and realize that that could be applied in multiple subjects. So we were thinking about it first in storytelling, but then I said, wouldn't it be cool to put it into like a science class, a lab class where you're working with chemicals that would respond like to temperatures differently, for example.
So that's interesting. So connect. Whoops, what is that? Oh no. All right, connect the too big, too little concept to a science lesson. Very nice. I like that. What else?
And then Taylor had a really great idea for create. I think I'll pass the torch to Taylor.
Sure. So I was thinking that the students could write a narrative, kind of placing themselves in a character in the story's shoes. It can be Goldilocks, it can be Baby Bear, or however they want to spin it. And they can either change the story to what they would do in that situation, or they can keep it the same, however they want to go about it, but just putting themselves in the perspective of a character in the story.
Very nice. I like that. And the other group, Megan, your group, you guys can unmic as well. What did you guys get for evaluating, analyzing, remembering? Or you can add to the other ones. It's a great idea, Taylor. I didn't think of having the kids be one of the characters and how they would respond differently. There's a little bit of evaluating in there as well. I mean, obviously when we're writing, I mean, you can't write without any of these skills. And that's why when we're in grad school, we do a lot of writing because we're ultimately, you know, synthesizing all of these skills. But go ahead, Megan's group. What'd you guys get?
Should I speak since I took the notes?
Yeah.
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, so to tie the top three in, we had create your own fairy tale with a moral. And then for evaluation, you had to defend why your story is similar, or like why is it a fairy tale, and critique a peer.
Defend how your story is what, similar?
Yeah, or like why is it a fairy tale, or why does it have a moral? So we were talking about morals.
Okay.
And also it connected to analyze, because you would have to, the students would have to compare their story to the one they created.
Nice. So you've got one activity,
Hit the top.
same thing that kind of Taylor's describing here, you know, using the word write, but you've got an activity where they're going to create their own fairy tale with similarities, has an own moral, and obviously they're going to have to, you know, explain that it's real, that this is a moral. They're going to have to compare what they come up with to the other story. These are good ideas, you guys. Anyone want to add something from the other group that you didn't get to say, but just jump in there? And I mean, this is such a good example for, breaking up an activity when we look at the word write. Let's talk about that actually. So now here's what I want to say, Hannah, about we can't just have the high level kids writing us a story and creating their own moral where we have these other kids who are going to take a quiz and they need to answer the name of the three bears. It's just not fair. But if we're teaching second grade, fifth grade, we're going to have a couple of kids in the class who can barely write. Can they create, you guys? Can they create that story that Brad and Taylor kind of described? Two different story types. Can we give them that? How would we do that? What would that look like? Thanks, Megan, then Hannah.
They could use maybe their voice, like they could record their story instead of writing it, or they could draw the story out and then explain it if they have more verbal communication skills than written communication skills.
That's nice. Go ahead, Hannah.
I was just going to say bringing technology into it. There's a lot of apps and things for creating like your own cartoon and so illustrating it in that way so it comes to life and putting voice to the characters and things like that. So using
Taylor. Thanks, Hannah.
I was going to say my mom gave me a great idea when she's an EL teacher, and she would give a framework for the students to work with, and it's just kind of like this fill in the blank type thing where they don't have to do all of the writing, but they do have to do at least some of it.
So can anyone make a distinction between Taylor's lesson and what Hannah and Megan are doing? It's really interesting. There's one sneaky little thing that Taylor has brought into it. Go ahead, Hannah.
So she's providing a scaffold for the students.
Yeah.
We're changing the actual task that they have to perform.
Correct. Hannah and Megan are looking at certain components of writing, creating plot, comparison, and they're going to present it through, they're going to present it orally. They're going to record themselves talking. They're going to tell their buddy, he's going to write down the story, whatever. Absolutely appropriate. Those are components of writing. Taylor's offering a whole other angle of the writing piece. She's actually going to promote the teaching of the writing, so they're actually going to have some sort of scaffolding piece. And I think a great lesson, you guys, for some really low levels is a combination of those two, right? Maybe you have them write the introduction with some sort of frame with the sentence structure as Taylor, gave us, so they do have a little bit of access to, practice their writing, improve upon that. But then also we don't want to completely leave them out of their creativity because they can barely write. So that's where Hannah and Megan are going to jump in and say, hey, listen, why don't we just hear what you have to say? So that's what I mean, you guys, by differentiation, not by blooms for the low, high for the high. Everybody's got to live in that high, okay? And that's what I mean also with the differentiated piece where it's just more work. Okay, it's more work for you guys to create multiple ways to give these kids access to the higher levels of blooms. But then you guys know I've been screaming this since module 2. If they're engaged and they're interested and they find value in what's going on and you're a decent person who cares about them, then the day is just easier. You just don't have to suffer and stress out and wonder if anyone likes what's going on or how miserable you are, how you just think, how awful everything is going. You work hard at the beginning, you prepare for multiple ways, and the kids just respond better. And then, obviously, we perform better when the kids are responding better as well. Anyone want to try? Let's just try one thinking off the top of our heads. I have a couple more minutes, you guys, and then I'll just show you my examples, which aren't, again, they're not as good as yours. But let's just throw something at you. Let's just say we're going to let's not look at a story. Let's look at a science lesson where we're, mixing let's say, okay, we all kind of understand pH, all right? We've got basic, acidic, okay? And that's the lesson for my 8th graders. We're looking at liquid compounds, basic, acidic, neutral. And if we're looking again at that list, think of how the sequence of this lesson is going to be. We're going to have to explain it to them. And that's kind of where teaching used to end. We explained it to them, and then we gave them a test. And we told them to memorize, memorize, memorize so you can pass the test. And it worked. But what they were doing with the information, not as great. And then nowadays, you can't just push tests on kids, and that's going to make the magic thing happen. Tests are not enough of a motivator anymore. Okay? What can we do when we're thinking of our 8th grade class? We're introducing basic versus acidic, the concepts. I don't know a lot about it, but I think I can come up with some ideas where they'd be evaluating, where they'd be analyzing. Go ahead. What are you guys thinking? Just out loud. Don't be shy. Thanks, Darby.
My thoughts were going towards like stomach aches, to be honest, because that's the only context that I have really, because I don't teach science. And the last time I heard about bases and acids was also in like 8th grade, but like thinking about foods that you would eat that would give you a more acidic stomach, and foods that you would eat that would help with yeah. And then like asking the kids to create some sort, but we're moving away from science and going more into nutrition, I guess.
Nutrition science, for sure. You tell me, which one of these are you looking at here?
I'm looking at, well, I was, for example, thinking create like a diet plan that would put something together like that. And then you're evaluating the different types of food, you're analyzing how they will respond in the body. I'm like, yeah, I guess, I don't know. Those are just my thoughts.
I love it, Darby. And if I'm starting that lesson, I'm going to say, how many kids have their dads have a big bucket of Tums in the glove compartment of their car?
Yeah.
That's how we're going to start it. This is what's happening. This is why Dad's taking all those Tums.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful introduction there, Darby. And you've got an end product where they're actually going to create some sort of diet that's going to be neutral or heavy in citrus, heavy in acid. Go ahead, Taylor. That's fantastic, Darby.
I was just thinking, if you wanted to keep it like science rather than nutrition and things, you could do like, I think it's called litmus paper test, where you look at all the acidities and those properties of different foods, and they can choose like all their different foods that they want to test and how much acid is in this and what's the litmus test say on this type of food, and just kind of exploring those options. And yeah.
Perfect. I remember when I was in teacher ed, we had this guy, he was telling us, he goes, I want to tell you guys good teaching versus bad teaching. He said good teaching, and he goes, remember when you were in college and you had a science class and then there was the lab? You know, you took Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, an hour for lecture, and then Thursday, 3 hours was lab. He goes, good teaching is lab. That's what you remember. That's where you were applying. That's where you were learning. And what Taylor just gave is a great example of lab. All right, we're going to throw out the litmus tests or these litmus strips. They're going to test everything. They're going to test their spit. They're going to test whatever the heck they want us to test, right? And they're going to have a good idea. And then they're going to jump into Darby's great presentation. Okay, I want to create a menu. I want you guys to do this. I want everyone to create a menu for Dad who's just got so much acid. And I'm thinking about for my lower end kids, and maybe I'm going to have some options. You're going to give them a lot of orange juice. You're going to give them a lot of milk. And then for my higher end kids, maybe I'm going to have them give them a couple of websites where they can search on some common home remedies for people with acid indigestion. You know what I'm saying? This is all application, you guys, and this is all good teaching. And I think we all see the theme here. It's relevant, it's real. And it's ironic that we spend so much time teaching kids things hidden from reality when they need to use it in real world. And reality is just so much more motivating and engaging. All right, anyone else want to throw anything else in there? That was great, you guys. All right, let me run through here, and then we'll watch our video of decent teaching. Okay. So let's see what I had. Mine were not great. You guys were way better than mine. But list the items, explain why Baby Bears was the best. For applying change, what she would do if she went to your house, analyzing, and this is why I want you guys to focus on these verbs again, of course. Compare what's real, what's not. Hey, was she a good person or not? Talk to us, tell me. And then ultimately, instead of bears throwing some fish. I like your guys' idea much better. You are now Goldilocks instead of her. And there are those verbs. And I'm not going to go too much into this slide because we've definitely hit on this over and over again. But when we think about differentiation, we look at the 4 areas of differentiation. So not only are we differentiating lessons, but we can break it down into 4 different specific areas. We vary the content, we vary the process, the delivery, we vary what they're going to do, and we vary the environment in which they're going to learn it. Okay? And I'll send this to you guys so you guys can go through it if you're interested. I gave an example of a 5th grade science project, the scientific process, teaching this to them, and where we're going to have all the kids. And I think what's key is that we don't want to have our lower end kids doing this and our higher end kids doing this. Somehow we're going to have to figure out how the lower end kids can have access to this, and then also how to make this somewhat engaging for the higher end kids who already know how to do it, okay, or already understand that concept. All right, so any questions on the activities, you guys, for this week? 1 is a big lesson. 2, you're going to grab somebody and critique their lesson. And then activity 3, we're going to do right now. Are we good? All right. All right, so this lesson is, there are 2 lessons to view, and I want you guys to watch them both. We're going to look at the elementary lesson where she's teaching phonics to some kids, and there's some glaring errors that you guys will see, but there's also some good things that she's doing, okay, that she's doing well. So let's take a peek. Oh, here's her lesson. I'm sorry. No, that's your guys' lesson. Where was her lesson? So she is going to focus on, I mean, basically, I'll tell you guys right now, basically what she's doing, she's trying to teach the kids the suffix and how the suffix can turn a noun plural, all right? And how the suffix has different ending sounds. Could be an S, could be a Z, but there's a lot in that lesson when you think about it. Singular to plural, ending sounds, how they're spelled, things like that. All right, and she's teaching from one of these little, I forget what these guys were called, but I mean, I lived with those things when I was teaching little ones, those charts, those word charts or whatever.
Okay, so part 2. We did some practices of some of our trick words and words of the day. Now today we're doing a different concept. So can everybody see the board? You have to be able to see it. Zena, can you see over there? Yeah? Okay. So I'm gonna put a word up, and I want somebody to read it. Let's see, where's my O at? Way over here. What word is this, friends?
Shop.
Shop. What does that word mean? Jalen.
Like you go in the grocery store and you gotta buy some clothes or something.
Okay, so the shop is like the name of the store, right? A shop is a store. But hang on, guys, hang on. What if I put this here? What's that word?
Stop.
Now, what does this word mean now?
Stop.
What does it mean?
Like
Sincere? I'm going to look for hands.
shop means that you're shopping and you're shopping for everything that you don't have.
That's what you're doing with shop, but I'm talking about if shop means a store. What about shops? Mackay.
Like you shopping.
So yeah, this one's confusing because it's an action. Guys, hang on. It's an action word and it's a thing.
It's a place.
But what I'm getting at is shop without the S is one store. But if we put the S on, it's a bunch of stores. So that's like I'm going to the mall and there are shops at the mall. But if I'm just going to Safeway, that's one shop,
I know.
one store.
I know.
No, Jalen, not right now. I didn't ask anything. So when I put that S on, it's making it many. It's making it more than one thing. So what we're looking at with this
Thank you. So before I forget, you guys, with Jalen, she's going to continue to get him to be quiet. because he wants to say something. And I understand her reticence. Okay, Jalen, what is it? And then boom, he's going to talk about for 7 minutes about how he went grocery shopping with his mom and the cops came and all sorts of madness happened. And then there goes your lesson, right? I understand that. But what she needs to do is quickly change it. I mean, she could say, and this is something you guys can do, is call on him, but you frame the question because he wants to talk. That's really what he wants. Okay? So you just say, okay, so what I'm going to do, Jalen, I got a question for you right now. So just quickly, I got dog. What would be? I've got one dog. How am I going to say this one? I've got two of them. And then give him a chance to respond. And again, he's still on point. Okay? So we don't want to keep, and you guys know this from being with kids, the more you tell them to keep quiet and keep quiet and keep quiet, the less likely it's going to happen. Okay? And then obviously, you guys see the big error already so far with this lesson? Go ahead, Brad. Don't be shy. Make a guess.
Well, I was going to say too is I feel like sometimes when someone just wants to keep, or they really, really want to talk, like just by saying their name and going like, I see that you want to talk, I will call on you in a bit, or like, you know, I can see that you want to talk, like just to acknowledge that you see them, I think makes a big difference too.
That's nice, Brad. So we got multiple. We can let him just say what he wants to say, get it out. We can redirect him. We can just acknowledge that we understand he wants to take a turn and he's going to get one. All of those are fantastic. We vary him, okay? But quiet, 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 that's one strategy as well, all right? But that one's just never going to work. The big error, you guys, and this is ironic, you'll see later in this video, she's actually working from a curriculum. They actually give her the words, okay, that to use. And the first one is shop, a verb. And then the next one is bug. Again, to these little guys, they say the word bugs, it's a verb. She's bugging, she bugs, and that's exactly the same reaction. And then the next word that she throws this one out, and she's reading it from the list. The next word is dock, D-O-C-K. The kids have no idea what a dock is. All right, so relevance, kind of having some game awareness of what's going on, right? I mean, she's teaching very specific pluralization suffixes, singular, plural. And now she's talking about verbs and nouns. Okay, it's getting buried, and it's funny that she's actually working from a curriculum that was given. I don't know who got paid the big bucks to write that, but that's some garbage. All right, let's go some more.
Lesson is something called the base word. Jalen, stop. Put your hand down. So friends, what's my base word?
Shop.
Shop. When I put the S on, the S is called a suffix. A suffix. So guys, just pay attention. I don't want to see your hands right now because I'm not asking you a question. The S is the suffix. Now I'm going to do another word with you guys, okay? Let's see who can get it. Jalen, be quiet. B, U, G. What word is this? What is a bug? Danielle?
A bug means when you coming.
I want to know the thing that is a bug. What is a bug? Not a thing you do, Zena.
Like a ladybug.
Yeah, like an insect.
Oh,
It's like an insect, like a spider, like a ladybug.
Like
What
a
if I
bee,
put
like an
S on? Shh. Janelle, what now?
Bug.
Bugs. Everyone say it. Bugs. So what does it mean now, Makai? Many bugs. Excellent job. So this is one bug. Sincere and Jalen, looking at the front, please. Jalen. Jalen, 1, 2, 3. I need you tracking at the front. Bug is one bug. Bugs is many bugs. So what's the base word, guys?
Bug.
And what's the suffix I'm adding?
Bug.
Makai got it. S. So the suffix is just the S. When we put it onto the word bug, it becomes what, friends?
Bugs.
Bugs. So when we add an S, it turns something from being like, it really sounds like S, but sometimes it sounds like a Z, bugs. So I'm gonna try a few different words. I'm gonna get friends to write some words up here for me in a second. So I'm gonna read you, that's really not a straight line. I am gonna read you guys some words. We're gonna spell them, and then I'm gonna have a friend come up and put the word under either S or Z based on what the ending sounds like. So just hold on, because you're gonna need to hear the words first. I'm gonna write them up here. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna make this word. So everybody should be tracking at the front silently. Everybody with mouths closed. I got D, O. Okay, so what's this word? Dock. And a dock is like somewhere
Another
you put your
verb,
boat,
too.
basically. What about if I do this and put a suffix? Dock. So who can go write this word under either S or Z based on what the sound is? I know that it's an S, but I want someone to tell me the sound at the end. Jalen, can you get the purple marker and write the word docks under either S or Z? Is right there. Yep. So you're picking which one it sounds like at the end.
I like how she repeats that.
Okay. Jalen says that it's an S sound at the end. Does everyone agree?
Yes.
Show it if you agree with them. Or does anyone disagree? Okay, so Danielle, you disagree. What does that mean? What do you think?
I think you're supposed to put it by
The Z. Okay, who agrees with Danielle? Danae? Most people disagree. Some people agree. Let's all say the word together. Docks. Docks. So what's that sound we're hearing at the end?
S.
It is an S. Jalen's right. Good job, Jalen. You can have a seat. So this one was a sound. Let's see about my next one. Okay. It's still a D, an O. Okay, wait, what's this word, friends?
Dog.
And we know that that means one dog. If I put my suffix on,
Okay. So what do you guys think? Talk to me. Go ahead, Brad.
I guess one of my questions is she's talking about suffix and tracking. I don't remember what age these kids are, but I understand that they can figure or they can learn what those words are, but I don't know if it's really, is it important that they know when she asks what is the suffix, that they need to know that vocabulary, at least at that age? I don't see the importance or the relevance there.
That's a good point, Brad. Does anyone respond to that? Go ahead, Hannah. Thank you.
It's a part of the program that she's using. It's the Foundations program, and they're always really explicit with the technical grammar. And I don't know, how old were those kids? Did it say on the
I'd say first grade.
first grade?
Oh, did it say second grade, Taylor? I think first is my guess.
I was just gonna say I think it's second or first grade, either one.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what I would teach it that early, but I guess it doesn't hurt.
I mean, I teach 11th and 12th graders about suffixes, and even then I don't think it's necessary. I think they understand what they do. I'm more interested in that they understand and I identify what do they do? And if sometimes we look at new words and based on their prior knowledge, I try to do prefixes and roots in terms of if they can identify some meaning behind the word, even though they've never seen it. And a suffix would tell you, what part of speech or what is it doing. But I mean, if my students don't remember the word suffix, of course, on a test, they're not going to write ever about suffixes. I mean, of course, I guess it could happen, but
I think what you've done, Brad, is you've actually demonstrated a pretty good argument why this woman should be teaching these kids the word suffix, because you want them to understand it. I think that what you said is huge. When you look at them later on, they're going to learn, what parts of speech based on what the ending is, things like that. I mean, that's so powerful. So maybe in 5th and 9th grade, we don't want to have to teach them again what suffix is. Is that an essential understanding in the lesson? I don't think so. I think the essential understanding is that we have ending sounds. Okay, she's teaching them reading, she's teaching them spelling. You use the term base word and she used the term suffix. I think that's fantastic. She's not really requiring them to repeat it, and it's probably not on a test, but I think exposing them to the vocabulary, and maybe if she's teaching phonics for a year, think of how many times she's going to say base word, prefix, suffix. They're going to know what those 3 words mean, at least where they fit on a word at the end of the year. Go ahead, Darby.
I was just going to jump in and say exactly what you were explaining, Henry. Sounds like differentiation to me, because there are some kids who will understand it without having the label of suffix and stem word and everything, and other kids who will have a hard time getting it when it's so abstract. But if they can put a label on it, they'll be like, oh, now I get this.
Yeah, I think, anyone else, what do you guys see? I know it's quick. I mean, that lesson was 9 minutes before, we didn't get to see the end, but in the last couple minutes, they're moving around a little bit. But you saw like the energy. I mean, this is all you have for 9 minutes. You got these kids for 9 minutes, and she had what, 6 kids there, 8 maybe? And she has 9 minutes to give them, some pretty small group, or this could be large group instruction on base word, suffix. But again, mainly I think she's teaching singular and plural. I mean, do you guys experience that same kind of thing when you got 7 to 9 minutes with the whole group? Or is that to be expected with those little guys, or do you think they're acting inappropriate? What do you think, Megan?
I think that's fairly normal. I think that there are some teachers who have better control than she did. But for this smaller group, I think she could have done better. But who knows? Maybe she's not actually their primary teacher, and they don't really have that rapport with her. So hopefully in the long run, you would have better control.
Go ahead, Taylor.
I think I liked the fact that she brought Jalen up to finally, participate in the discussion and participate like right up on the board. But it did seem like she had some previous baggage with Jalen, and that she was letting it show through in her attitude towards him and her tone. And I think it's just a really good reminder to kind of wipe the slate clean each day and not bring that extra baggage from a different day into that.
It's definitely kind of hard to mask that irritation, right? And I'm thinking, if I'm sitting there, I'm her administrator, and she's been teaching this class for 4 years, and I look at how she's dealing with Jalen, and you can tell exactly what Taylor said, this baggage, this irritation. I'm wondering what's going on when I'm not here. How is she talking to this little guy? Okay. I think if I'm introducing that lesson, I'm really focusing on, and again, it was part 2, so we don't know, but I'm just sitting there flat out. I'm saying, you guys, look at this. We got 1 pen. Check this out. Is there 1 pen in the world? No, there are 2. Okay, here's how we spell pen, boom. This is what we do. We got more, because there's not 1 pen in the world, is there, you guys? We've got to put a word. We got to make this word look like it's more than 1, because we don't know. It's not a secret. We have to make it obvious. So this is what we do. So she could have, kind of reemphasized what the skill was at the beginning. I thought there was opportunity, but it was lesson 2, so we don't know. I want to throw this in there, and this is pretty sketchy, but I want to dive in there. And I've got a few minutes because you guys know I have that another module right after this. But I'm going to throw this out. There's argument to be made that the teacher needs to look like the kids. The teacher should look like the kids. What does that mean, and where do you stand? And I know this is a crazy one, and I'll try to sum it up at the end, but I want to hear one person jump in there. What do you guys think? The teacher should look like the kids. Go ahead.
I'm going to jump in and say the longer I teach, the more I want to wear Harry Potter t-shirts.
Okay, good. I'm glad Darby's taking this conversation in the right direction. Here's the deal, you guys. If you look like your kids, you most likely understand where they're coming from. You understand their experience, you understand their intention, you know what it's like when they wake up in the morning, you know what it's like when they go home, you know what their big brother's like. It's a huge advantage to teach if you have the same experience as the kids. Of course, it's not the way, it's not the truth, it's not an absolute. The key here, though, is that you have to understand where they come from. You have to relate to the kids. My first job, and I was the best teacher at this school for 5 years, was in East Los Angeles. 95% Latino kids. And then there's me. I was absolutely terrific. And this is why, Taylor, because I grew up in that neighborhood. I was the random white kid that grew up in this neighborhood. I knew everything about it. I knew what store they hung out. I know where they're late in the morning. I know exactly who's big brother's trouble. I knew so much about what was going on with those kids. So if you look like the kids, that's powerful. All right? A lot of you guys work in Asia. Nobody's looking, you guys are not looking like those kids. But think of how much you know about the culture if you've been there for a year or 2 or 3. And how different your understanding of where they're coming from is teaching ESL for 3 years as opposed to that very first year. So the moral of what I'm saying here, you guys, your background can be wonderfully advantageous to you, but it doesn't have to exclude you. The key is you have to relate to them. You have to dig and fight and scratch and see where they're coming from. Okay? When you can relate and you understand intention, you become phenomenal when you're teaching, okay? But understanding intention is really hard to do if you don't understand what's going on, okay? I'll leave it at that, you guys. I'm going to run into the other cohort or the other module, and I will see you guys next week, okay? Keep doing the work. Some of you guys got some catch up to do. Good night now.